coordinator of Social Watch, and he is from Uruguay.
Thank you very much. Hi. Thank you, Mirjam, ladies and gentlemen, and so many friends in the public. Now, it's quite a responsibility to talk after hearing Koos Michel and to address some of the same issues. And, but I will try, you know, and I'm hearing about practical idealism, and so I will try to be less Latin America, not do much rhetoric, be concrete, and bring in figures, be practical. Now see if I can understand this. Okay, anyhow, I brought a paper. We'll come back to it somehow. Just look at the figure over there, the 3 lines. You get an idea. It's in here in this brochure about the basic capabilities index, which Social Watch computes, and we are launching today the 2011 version of that index. Now, these 3 lines represent at least 2 of them, the good news. The blue line over there is international trade, the world volume of trade as measured in exports. Of course, somebody's exports are somebody else's imports. So world trade, and the 3 moments are 1990, the year 2000 in the middle, and 2010 to the right. So between 1990 and 2010, world trade multiplied more than 5 times in terms of exports. So there are many people that would tell you that trade is indispensable for growth and development. There are even many programs of aid for trade. So there you have it. Trade is gone up and up and up. Present from something like 700 billion a year in 1990 to 3-point-something trillion in 2010. You have the figures out there in the brochure. Now, the red line is the GDP per capita. Per capita, not total GDP in the world, which has gone up dramatically also. Between 1990 and 2010, the average person in the world doubled her or his income from, more than doubled actually, from something a little bit over $4,000 in 1990 to over $9,000 per capita in 2010. Now, this is very good news. Of course, for a society like the Netherlands, $9,000 per capita a year doesn't sound as too much, but if you think of, for example, the Millennium Development Goals of reducing by half, not even eliminating the number of people with less than $1 a day, on average, the world has more than 25 times that average. So there is plenty of resources and average income so as not to have anybody suffering from hunger in the world. Now, the final line, the green line, that is the basic capabilities index, which is an average of infant mortality, births attended by specialized personnel, and primary education. 3 very basic indicators. All of them should go up to 100. I mean, infant mortality under 5 should be reduced almost to 0. No children should be out of school. No women should deliver their babies without assistance. That is kind of, they're all part of the MDGs. They're all part of any person's concept of some basic dignity, which is part of the human rights. All of them can be constructed as human rights. And, of course, all of them are part of any social floor that we can conceive. Now, the world is far from achieving that. And the progress between 1990 and 2010 hardly shows in the figure, at least not at this scale. You really have to blow up the figure to show that, oh yes, there was progress. The progress was actually of 5 percentage points between 1990 and 2000, and of 3 percentage points between 2000 and 2010, which is the opposite trend of trade and GDP, all of which grew faster after the year 2000 than in the decade before, but the social indicators progressed slower in that same decade than in the decade before. Now, why can that be possible? And the answer to that was in, let me see if we reach there, here, inequality. Now, this picture, many of them can think, oh, that's the Occupy Wall Street movement. You know, they say 99% of the population on the one hand and 1% of the other, and so on. No, sorry to tell you, that is not the Occupy Wall Street movement. That is the cover of the latest issue of the magazine of the International Monetary Fund. The F&D on top stands for Finance and Development, and this is the September 2011 issue of Finance and Development, publication of the International Monetary Fund. I am not a person known for supporting or quoting the International Monetary Fund, but in this case, I can tell you, I was very surprised to hear from them some things which are said in that publication that said, well, some of our beliefs about development in the last decades do not seem to actually have worked. Oh, yes. And what beliefs are those? Trickle down. Wells would trickle down. Sorry, it doesn't work. The tide will lift all boats. Sorry, it doesn't work. The pie has to grow before it can be divided. Sorry, it's not working. In the countries where the pie is growing, the poor get less of their share. Even, and the last one, that we should go from all very poor and equal to a situation where we are all very rich and equal, which is probably the European social model that we would like exported all around the world. And in between, we will have a period of inequality that is necessary for growth. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. Actually, you will read, the new concept is inequalities are actually hindering economic growth. They are becoming not just unethical, not just morally unjustifiable, but also economically unwise. And yet, the current research, UNICEF has done research based on 128 developing countries that the IMF surveys in their economic policies, and it found that in their current plans for 2011 and 2012, 104 of them are implementing or considering austerity packages. Austerity is the fashion of the day, even for countries that are growing, that are not indebted, that don't need it, but that's the fashion. And, you know, I used to say, well, in our part of the world, our Christmas is in the middle of the summer, because we have summer in December. And yet we decorate our Christmas trees with snow and so on, because that's what Christmas looks like. And it's case the same. We do austerity because everybody's doing austerity. UNICEF will tell you that the intervention opportunity in children is a limited window. And if you don't feed them, and when they're small and when they need it, that opportunity is lost, and the damage will remain all their life. and the cost for the countries in terms of healthcare and lost opportunities is enormous, you know, when you incur in that kind of things, particularly more when you don't need it. A word on happiness, which was, I think, also one of the worries. Of course, it's a major discussion always whether happiness can be created or even measured. In Bhutan, of which Marianela will probably tell us because of the special South-South cooperation program linking Bhutan, Costa Rica, and Benin, they measure the National Happiness Index, which is an idea which I always thought, oh, that's very nice, very sympathetic, nice rhetoric. Now the OECD has come out at its 50th anniversary with a well-being index and indicators. And if you look at them, out of more than 80 basic indicators that they consider, 78 are the same that are being measured in Bhutan. So it's not such a weird idea. The thing is that the OECD doesn't dare to tell you which one is the one that will make you happy. Is it health? Is it good housing? Is it the amount of time out of work, or leisure, and so on? You just have the indicators. You have to compose your own idea. On the other hand, I recently came across a study that is about to be published by the Psychological Journal of the US, which is one of the major magazines on journals, academic journals on psychology. And they carry, in this coming issue, the result of 40 years of study of happiness in the US. It's the first time that you have such a long-term study in a single country. Basically asking people, how do you feel today? Do you feel better than yesterday or not? You know, that kind of purely subjective, non-economical feeling on how people feel. Now, over 40 years, that gives you a very interesting period to compare with, for example, economic growth, war, all kinds of things, and try to find a correlation. They couldn't find correlation, not even with unemployment or economic growth or income going up and down or wars or electoral periods or whatever. And they did find a correlation with inequalities. Inequalities make people unhappy even if they're earning more, because the sense of unfairness is apparently deeply enrooted in human psychology as one of the things that make you feel the worst and even generate the kind of whatever toxins or things in your chemistry are that make you feel unhappy. This is all very interesting, except that in that same study, you will find a small note saying that this happens on the average, you know, that correlation between inequality and unhappiness. It happens on the average, and it's very strong by the bottom 80% of the social scale, but the upper 20% does not correlate with it. Those people are not unhappy when inequality grows. And that kind of leads us to a reflection of how are we going to do to create the general happiness and to fight inequality when not everybody is convinced that this is the way to go. Thank you very much.